Howdy folks, welcome back. Okay, I have not touched sketching form in some time now. So you'll see that the drawing on my paper is half finished for a reason. So it's broken up into three spots. You have this character that I drew where the top is, it has scales, there's shading, there's some detail in there. You can really see what's going on. And then you have the part of the head where there is some shading, like a coating of graphite that's a little darker, but there's no scales on top of it yet. And then, as we move down here, it's mostly outline, okay, with very, very subtle hints of shading, even in one direction. This was intentional. So grab your sketchbooks, grab your pencils, and try to draw along with me, regardless of the subject matter. You could be drawing a person, a car, or whatever. I'm going to teach you how to bring form out from a flat 2D surface. All right, the first mistake everybody makes that wishes they could do better in form is they jump into this stuff too quickly, which is detail. This comes later. This should come last. You have to get that coating of graphite down so that any details that you put down, there will be value and shading in between all of the details. You won't be forced to go back in and shade in between everything. All right, so sharpen your pencil, keep that sharp at all times. I'm using a 4B. I prefer the Bs because you can get dark, medium, and light lines with them. And what I'm doing is I'm keeping the strokes very close together and I'm moving across the entire subject until it's done. So that means all the way to the tip. Okay, and then my arm, because everybody is different that draws, okay, every single one of you listening right now has a comfortable position that you hold your arm in to give you the best lines possible. I encourage you to keep the angle of your arm, but you're going to take your sketchbook and tilt it so that you can apply the same good lines that you did before, but in a different direction. Keep the strokes close together. The reason you're keeping them close together is because it fills in more of the gaps during shading process. Okay, once you start doing that, in a minimum of 3 different passes, you can start to see a significant improvement in a really nice layer of graphite on here. Now, if you're me, who obsesses about this stuff, I will probably do, I don't know, 7 to 10 different passes just to start. And the reason I do that is because I want to make sure that every single little area that I have on here is covered for me. So that when I go back in and I'm going, hey, I want to put down maybe some skin wrinkles here or whatever, I can put down a wrinkle and know that there's shading already around it. I don't have to go back in and be like, okay, I got to get light shading around that. That's ridiculous. That's why younger artists and aspiring artists like fall into that trap of details. And then what happens is you end up putting details on something and there's no form underneath it. Okay, so now that we're getting a nice coating, we ain't done yet. So we are going to put some shading on the under part of the jaw. So this part is just filling in some gaps that I was kind of feeling a little antsy about. I get antsy and nervous a lot and anxious whenever there are areas in my drawings where I know it should be better, but I skipped it. So I got to go back and do it because, you know, I obsess about that and that's the way I am. I know that most of you probably are too, which is why you're still listening to me talk about details. See how I just jumped to the scales? That's what I do. I just jump to little areas like this and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go into that little area. Oh, I got to go back into shading. So let's get back into it. All right. This has a pretty nice shading or a pretty nice coating. I'm still not satisfied. So I'm going to turn my sketchbook again, making sure it's in focus. Now, the way I'm physically holding my pencil, my pinky over here is guiding my palm. I'm keeping the palm off of the page. I don't want to be heavy-handed. And I'm holding the pencil at the butt end of it, way back here. So I'm letting like 3/4 of the pencil just flow freely. And this allows me to control it. So I'm doing small little lines, and then I'm widening it up, and I'm making sure that each stroke that goes back and forth is close together. So you want that smooth. You don't want to have to rely on a blending stick or eraser or anything to shape. You want to do it with the actual pencil. No offense to anybody that uses those tools. That's totally fine. To each their own. Let's keep those together. There we go. Now, let's start bringing the form out. Look up here at the cheek. See how there's a slight shadow underneath that cheek? If I were to take that shadow away, it would just be scales and the entire side of the face would be flat. What I want you guys to do is, if you're drawing a creature, drawing a character, weapon, or whatever, look at the spots on your creature where you know there's a bony landmark, like a protruding jawbone or layers of fat that are collecting around the mouth or the wrinkles or whatever. I see one immediately. It's this part. There's a underlying muscle right inside there. I kind of hinted at it with this line, but I don't want to get any darker with that line. That is going to be a very important form line that I'm going to use. I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to very lightly start to layer on shadow directly over top of that line. Okay, so the reason you want to draw the lines, the original lines, lightly is because when you start putting the value down, they're going to end up being the same exact tone as that line. So then you don't have to worry about erasing the line. It's already being blended into the drawing. This is why outlining your work isn't good if you want realism. And there's nothing wrong with outlining it if you're going for the cartoony / cell shading look. But if you want realistic shapes, keep the outlines out of it. Okay, and then you're going to go back in. You see how I turned the sketchbook again, just like I did taking the graphite all the way across. Now you can start to see that this area is getting a little darker, and we are nowhere near done. So what I want to do now is turn it, and I'm going to look at the edges of that dark blotch, and I'm going to fade that out by lightly shading in on the edges of that. It takes patience, everybody. This is a true test of patience. You get used to it after a while. Once you start seeing good results from doing this, it's going to make you want to become more patient. You know, we live in the microwave generation. We want to see everything instantly. There we go. You see that? Okay, this is pass number, 3, just to blend that in. This is where patience comes in. You might have to shift the grip of your pencil too. Just so you personally get a comfortable line. Because remember, everybody listening right now and drawing along with me, you all draw differently. So don't feel ashamed if you have to twist your sketchbook 39 different ways. I don't care. Whatever gets you a good result. Now, the form that's starting to show is pretty big. That's a big jaw muscle right there. That's awesome. That's what I want. I can almost turn this. Well, it'll hit my desk post, so I don't want to do that. Let's turn it this way and try to get a nice angle right under here. So this is where that muscle would show up. And then the shadow of the under part of the jaw right there. So I'm going back over everything that I just blended, and I'm making sure that I don't press harder. Don't press harder. Just keep the same pressure and just blend it in with whatever you have around it. Now, hopefully you see the importance of when I first started, I shaded across the entire jaw. Now you have something to shade into. This is where realistic forms can really come out. Because your foundation, it's already laid for you. foundation as in the coating of graphite that you put down. Now sometimes you're going to get areas where it still doesn't look smooth. That's okay. What you want to do is you want to keep layering on, keep the pencil strokes close, and just fill it back and forth until it starts to take the blotches away. The other thing is, it actually adds a layer of realism to the creature, because that imperfection of the skin that I see here, I mean, that could be really neat for some scales and wrinkles and stuff. Maybe I want that there. Like, who knows? So now I have to think about another spot where a shadow could exist, and there's definitely one in the crease of the mouth. Okay, so I'm just going to run my pencil across the crease. That crease is pretty dark, so any shading that I put across that isn't as dark as the crease, so it won't ruin it. This is how you can play on values. You see what one value looks like to the other value, and you can see if you're going to ruin it or not. So for example, I can add in some really, really dark darks right in here where the lips touch, and it's not going to ruin anything else because I know that's where shadow is existing. Okay, I want to show you a really cool trick. Those of you that know me know what I'm about to do with this black Prismacolor. Those of you that see me for the first time, take the black Prismacolor. It's wax based. Okay, this is not graphite. And you're going to hold it lightly like this, and you're going to run it across the graphite that you just sketched. Keep the strokes nice and slow and keep them as close together as possible. You're going to run across everything. What this does is it helps keep the graphite down so it does not smear it, but two, it offers a completely new, different type of texture. So it's going to cover different gaps in the paper than a graphite pencil normally would. Okay, and then next, right in here in the crease of the mouth, I'm just going to put some black Prismacolor, and it's going to be a rougher texture. It's like, let's say you're making a creature right now and it has some rough skin. Great. This is going to be really helpful for it. Now I got to be careful with the black Prismacolor because at the end of each stroke, you're going to need to take the graphite again, and you're going to need to blend the edges of it back into the rest of your drawing. So they play off one another. Now, in that direction, I wasn't really happy with how the strokes are turning out, so I'm just going to turn the page again, and I'm going to go almost vertically. Let's go a little farther. There we go. So now it's covering different types of gaps in the paper texture that the black Prismacolor couldn't touch. And if you keep layering those on, and they play off one another, you're going to have some really awesome textures. Okay, so here's another really cool part that most people don't do, and that is I'm going to use the tone of the paper as a highlight. And I kind of already did that with the form coming out of this jaw. You see how there's like a light bulbous shape right here? That's where the muscle is sitting and the fat tissue and everything. I'm going to outline bigger scales. But I want you all to realize something. The scales that you draw in places like that need to follow the contours of the creature's shape. Don't just draw the scales flat on in 2D, otherwise it won't look like form is existing. The whole point of us doing these form exercises, especially with characters and creatures and such, is that you want the creature to feel like it's living in an atmosphere on a 2D surface. Okay, like this sketch up here, this is another creature. There's like two huge shapes, a gun on its head and some eyes and stuff. There's a reason why this one is lighter in the background than this one. It's because this is, fading off with mist, with fog. It looks like it lives and breathes within this page. So you want your stuff to look like it's living and breathing in your page. Okay, so the scales that I'm putting on here, if there's a big fat area or just a bigger area, usually those get the bigger scales. And as you move into places that need to to articulate more, the scales are smaller because it's more flexible that way. If you don't believe me, just Google red iguana. Like, the face on the red iguana hasn't changed in millions and millions of years. It's a dinosaur, basically. Look at a Komodo dragon. Look at a Gila monster. There's so many different reptiles that we can look at where it does this. And like little gaps in here. Notice how I'm just taking my pencil and I'm pushing directly down because I can use the sharp tip of my pencil a little bit more. I might darken the crease of the mouth too. All right, so now what's happening is we got this big area, and I'm still going to use bigger scales. Maybe right in the back. I'm not making them too dark yet, but I am bending the scales to fit the shape of the jaw. Because remember, the muscle is right down here, and you got that little shadow, so I'm going to flatten off those scales, make them look like they're, try to illustrate this with my pencil. It looks like they're coming out and then back. So I want to make those a little smaller down there and then larger as they come up this jaw. There we go. Okay, so it's smaller down here where it's about to come out at us, and then as it's coming out at us, it's getting bigger and bigger until we get to it's like the highest peak of that round shape. Okay, now here's another really cool trick. If you really want to make it come out at us, you darken up the corners of the scales inside there, and you fade off that dark color like this, but only do it at the highest point. Highest point as in the fat and the round shape coming out at us, okay? Nothing in here. You can fade those off because it's atmosphere. Like, we don't need to see every single little detail. But what we do need to see is, you know, make sure that bulbous shape comes out at us. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's keep going. So this jaw, it probably needs just a thin outline of where the bottom of the jaw is, because this is the throat. Okay, so now I know where that bottom of the jaw is, and I'm just going to shade in a slightly darker outline. I would eventually fade this up into the jaw again. But at least we know where the bottom of the jaw is. And now, guess what? We can look at this area. So based on the muscles and based on the skull, you know, the muscles need to travel most of that chin all the way up here. So you can see that dark blotch that just happened. You know the drill. You know what I'm about to say. Turn the sketchbook like this, and then you're going to fade that off. Right, like this. I'm going in a different direction. I'm very lightly applying circular motions. This helps cover shading and cover the strokes that I previously missed. I'm going to go back up here. Oops, I accidentally pushed a little too hard there. There we go. And now I'm going to go across. So this is what, pass number 4? I'm assuming. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I lose count. I'm at the point now where I do so many passes, I just see if it looks good. If it doesn't look good yet, then I just don't do it anymore. I'll stop the passes. Okay, so like right in here at the mouth crease, I'm going to have to put some scales that are going to be rolling upwards because, you know, it's probably the lip. So that'd probably be a good indication of, hey, let's put some scales rolling outwards down the jaw right here. And then I'm going to take my black Prismacolor and I'll just go right back in here because the black Prismacolor just offers a really awesome dark. Like, no, you would probably have to have an 8B, almost a charcoal pencil, to show up right there. And I don't want to use one of those. And then inside the little scales right here, I can probably do that. There we go. That's really showing up well. Okay. I hope everybody is happy with this and you're learning something. You know, oh, by the way, I have to keep the material different. So I'm not going to put any more values really on the horn coming out, except maybe right here, some tiny, tiny little circles. There's going to be some broken skin, kind of like your cuticle, you know. But over here would get the majority of the shading because this is bone. Okay, so that's growing out of there. Okay, and then I'm just going to start putting bigger scales on the parts that are coming out at us the most. Also, look, nature's random. Nature's very random, but at the same time, nature is also symmetrical. So it does look kind of cool every now and then if you put some intelligently designed scales. It looks like it's supposed to follow a pattern down the creature's skin. Would you call it skin? No, scales. There we go, we can do that. Now I'll probably have to go back in here and just take the tip of this pencil and put some tiny little dark corners in the scales so that we know there's separation there. Yeah, right like that. So in places like this where the shadow could be casting on the surface of the bottom jaw, yeah, that definitely needs some more detail. Like right in here, I'll make it bigger and just random bigger ones. This kind of looks like a spine right there. Let's just put that in. Yeah. Okay, that looks kind of cool. Now here, this is where the skin starts to break up and it's going to meet that horn. So if this happens, spend more time applying values to wrinkles and folded skin than scales. So I would stop the scales at this point and just start lightly putting in very thick folds of skin. Just small little circles so you know that the shading is smooth. Okay, so I'm making this up as I go. I'm not looking at a rhino reference right now or anything with a horn. I'm just looking at it based on the contours of what's going on with my creature. So I know that there's some skin that needs to be broken up right here and maybe some broken material and, you know, like the material on a rhino horn is actually the same material as its fingernails and toenails. Maybe I can take that design from nature and put it into my creature. Okay, now we are talking. This is when it starts to get a lot of fun, or really fun, because the layering is really bringing out the forms now. And when you guys start your drawings, it could probably be a little discouraging, especially if you don't think you're good at shading and you don't know how to bring out the forms yet. It just takes time in order to build all of this up. Okay, I showed you the 3 stages. I showed you the scales at first, I showed you the value laying, and I showed you the outline. Now you know how all of these things play together if you just take the time to lay on that first coating of graphite. That very first layer that I run across that shape, that's the most important part. Now notice how I did not touch the bottom of this jaw. There's a reason. This is a very important section of this drawing because the cast shadow that this head is going to have, it's going to really make this creature pop off of the page. Yeah, sure, I have some subtle shading and details up here. You know, like the cheek that's coming out at us, I put some shadow underneath. That muscle that's coming out of the strong jaw. But really, if this creature is lit from above, there's going to be a pretty important shadow down here, especially a core shadow on the horn, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, and actually, let's just do the horn core shadow right now. Since the horn already has a lot of detail on it, and other than some little war-torn nicks and maybe some fight scratches, I don't really need to add much to it. So I'm just going to look at the rounded part where the core shadow would exist. Those of you that have taken foundation drawing, you know exactly what this is, especially if you've rendered cylinders and cones. You know about the core shadow on rounded parts. Now this thing isn't perfectly rounded, there's some flat spots on here, so I need to take into account of this thing not being a perfect cone. It's like a bent cone. But notice how the top of this line is actually darker than what's fading off underneath it. There's a reason for that. Okay, the core shadow's strongest part is where it's the darkest, right here. Okay, because the bottom of this horn has bounce light coming from its ground. Okay, and I don't need to put anything else on the tip. I'm happy with that. But out here, it needs a core shadow that's a little bit more spread apart, because the material of the horn is spreading apart. And I need to be careful with this. I don't want to go overboard, so I'm not going to press any harder than that in this section. What I am going to do is press a little harder right here. Okay, because the tip that it's going to, it's a little bit more fine-tuned. Okay, it's also turning a different direction. It's kind of wrapping towards the center of the jaw. This one is flattening out. So the reflection is more dispersed around the edges. You're still going to get a core shadow down here, but here's what we need to do before that even happens. We are going to lay several directions of graphite across this neck, and then we're going to layer all of that up so that we can then put black Prismacolor over top of everything. Let's turn it again. Hopefully this is helping you. I'm going in depth as much as I can. I mean, this is how I've been drawing for years, and most of it is trial and error, especially the shading technique where I go in different directions here. I mean, I'm not the only one on earth that does it. I'm just saying, for me personally, it took me a while to figure it out, because I don't use Blending 6, and I know there are other methods to have really nice shading. You know, take a soft cloth, get some graphite powder. Those of you fine artists, you know exactly what that is. Offer some awesome techniques going on there. There we go. You know what's happening? Hold on a second. I have words written under here, and it looks like the words are coming. Oh my gosh. That's why it's not smooth right there. Okay, well, whatever I wrote underneath here, it's adding a texture that I did not plan. It's kind of cool. So that was an unexpected happy accident. So let's go in this direction. Notice how I'm not pushing harder. I'm just going over what I previously put down. There we go. And this angle. See what we can do here. Okay, I think I went at this angle already. I can't quite remember, because I'm on pass, I don't know, 407. Okay, black Prismacolor. Now, I got a little disclaimer. When she put a black Prismacolor down, it's not coming up, because it's wax, and you're mixing it in with graphite. Not only does it help the graphite stay down, it doesn't really smear at all unless you press really hard, and it really bites the paper. So I'm going to put one coating across there over everything that I just drew, and I don't worry about ruining what I just drew, because I'm not pressing harder than what the graphite shows over on this jaw. So then I know I won't ruin it. I have to push harder in order for those details to disappear. They're not going to do that. Let's go. Let's put in that core shadow. So I'm going to go under here. I never even gave the reason of why I'm being so subtle with this. The skin that's hanging off the bottom of this jaw, this character is not ripped, okay? He's not Ronnie Coleman. It's subtle skin, it's a subtle shift. It's kind of like your jawline connecting to your glands on the side of your throat, connecting to your trachea, connecting to your side of your neck. There's a subtle shadow there, okay? And you'll even see it in sunlight where it's not super chiseled. There is value spreading across your jaw. That's what I want to show. So lightly, I'm going to put in some darker lines running across the entire bottom of this jaw. I'm going to go all the way over to the end of the skin. I'm going to go back. I'm actually doing small circles or ovals. Okay, so let's say you did this, but the edges of that black Prismacolor, it looks way different than the graphite. Okay, well you could do two things. You can take the graphite and blend it into it, or you could just spread out that black Prismacolor until it takes up a larger area. Very lightly fade it off, and then you come in with your pencil and you start going over the black Prismacolor with the pencil. Lightly. Patience, patience, patience. This is where patience comes in. You can see how the edge of the throat and the skin hanging down, I'm losing it. Please don't think it's ever gone. You're going to come back to that point and refine it if necessary. We're layering, remember that. We're layering until it gets to the details. I'm going to change the direction and I'm going to keep the strokes close together. And notice how I don't care that the strokes are going past the throat. I don't care. I can always fix that later. I'm going to go back over this at a different direction. And what that does is it starts to fade off the edges of the black Prismacolor. I'm going to go with black Prismacolor again, directly over that. But this is when it gets darker. You had to lay that first coating in there. Remember how I said that shadow is going to be pretty strong? I'm going to start light, okay, and I'm at an angle. I'm going to push harder and harder and harder with that shadow running across that jaw. And I'm going to fade it back off at the beginning of that horn. Now, this is going to show up pretty well, and it's going to be a harsh edge on the top and the bottom. Take your pencil and put tiny little circles at the end of that. And what you're going to do is you're going to release the pressure of those circles as you move down the surface. See that? It's back and forth, small ovals. And bingo. We just blended it in with the throat. So you just do that across the whole thing. Small circles. And then that sharp edge is eventually going to disappear and it's going to go back into the throat. There you go. It's gone. Now I don't want this harsh edge right up here. So I'm just going to do a similar movement, but not as big. I'm just going to subtly, is that a word? Yeah. I'm just going to put very subtle marks going back up the side of the jaw. There we go. Okay. Now we got a core shadow in there. Now we have to think, what part of this jaw is sticking out the most? Probably right here. Okay, so there's going to be some darkness. I can outline this because I know that shadow is going to be pretty harsh. Now I'm going to take this pencil and I'm going to put some small circles in there and fade it up into here, and I'm going to go back down. I'm going to go back up. I'm going to go a different direction. You don't have to do circles again, but you just need to go back over it. Okay, now it looks good. I can probably get a little darker right in here. This part of the jaw is the darkest of the dark. That's the part where if it's lit from above, there isn't even any bounce light that's going to get to that spot. So now what I want to do is I want to take my graphite pencil and I'm going to go over every single thing that I just did. Lightly, and I'm going to start filling in the gaps that the black Prismacolor missed. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going like this. Very, very subtle marks. And now you can start to see everything becoming smoother. Okay, so if you have stuck around, hopefully that you have picked up some good shading techniques. So now I'm going in and I'm just putting in some dark darks in the spots where I knew we kind of lost some values there. Some of the atmospheric perspective will take care of this. You know, we don't want to show off everything. We just want to show off specific details and let the viewer fill in the rest. Like, you guys already know what the face looks like. I don't need to put in every single detail everywhere else because you can fill in the gap with your own mind. I might put in some smaller ones, maybe like out here, just to kind of show like, hey, this is how small the scales are near the lips. Is it necessary to put in the rest over there? No. But what I do need to do is I need to fill in some of these areas lost to help with the the silhouette of it. So like all of those strokes that I went past the skin with that I didn't care about before, I'm actually just going to use that. I'm just going to turn that into small little neck, like skin horns. They're asymmetrical too, and they're chaotic, which is good because nature's chaotic. And I'm just going to kind of place those smaller details in here. There we go. And I might go over everything again with 4 or 5 more passes because I'm obsessive and that's what I do. You know, up here I can put in some details kind of fading off. Maybe a small ear hole. Hey, why not? Okay. It's got a here, right? All right, so hopefully you liked the lesson today. It was really in depth about bringing in form and also shading. If you got a kick out of it, if you liked it, comment below, tell me what you're working on. I do run a private mentorship if you want to learn how to do this, or if you want to learn how to draw cubes, cones, cylinders, and spheres. I take all skill levels. Just email me at bobbyrebholz@gmail.com. Check the pinned comment and the links in the description. You are incredibly welcome to join our Discord, where we have tons of like-minded individuals, over 6,000 members now. And everybody just keeps learning and showing us their art. What would you name it? I don't know. He kind of looks like a Larry to me. And if it's a female, what would her name be? Give me a male and a female version name for this. Okay. Thanks, everybody. I had a blast. Peace.